Welcome to In Bed with a Druid, where I snuggle up with fascinating people as I tempt them to reveal their cheeky bedtime secrets and chat intimately about their lives, beliefs, careers, wishes and dreams. Hello and welcome to the third episode of In Bed with a Druid. Today, joining me in the socially distanced virtual druid bed is multi-talented cartoonist, actor, animator, director and producer, and father, an all-round lovely guy, Gary Andrews.
There were two in the bed and the little one said...
Hello, Gary.
Hello. God, that's a lot to live up to. Thank you very much. And can I say, first of all, how sad it is that we're in a socially distanced bed.
I know.
I feel cheated. This pandemic has cheated me of the experience. But there you go. What can we do?
Well, when it all calms down, you have to come back again. Thank you for jumping into bed with me. It's good to have you here at last. It's been a while, hasn't it?
Yes.
And it's good to have this opportunity to chat. So, do you realise it's been 9 years? 9 years since Albion, since the Spirit of Albion.
Yes, yes. It's 10 years this year since we did the live show at Witchfest.
Is it really? Oh, yes,
which is what kicked off the film, which happened the following year. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, 2010 was when we did the actual live performance on stage.
My goodness, doesn't time fly?
But 9 years since we got to know each other properly.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
Which is quite something.
It is. And for those who don't know, Gary directs and produces films, don't you? And this one specifically was called The Spirit of Albion. And it was based on a song by, or a number of songs by the pagan folk singer, Damh the Bard. And we had kind of a bit part. I think I was a dead body in it, but Gary was running around producing and organising actors, and it was really, really good, memorable weekend.
Yes, that was amazing, and quite rainy. It was one of those. It was
fairly wet, and we were sleeping in tents, which were fairly wet too. I seem to remember.
Yeah. But it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun that weekend.
And my goodness, you've been on a journey and a half since then.
Just a bit, quite an unexpected one, a lot of it, but yes, it's been quite a journey.
Of course, at that time I met your lovely wife, Joy, as well.
Yeah, and our lovely Ceridwen in the film.
She was indeed, she was, and sadly, since then you've lost her. Maybe tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, we used to make the films together, and we worked as a team. She, as well as being an incredible actress, she was my editor. She was my co-producer. So we were sort of joined at the hip, very much so.
Sure.
And with the kid, we worked together all day. We had the kids. It was beautiful. And then in October 2017, I went away on business to Canada, and we just spent a weekend in Glastonbury selling copies of the DVD of the follow-on film Tales of Albion at a fairy festival. And we'd been away, had this fantastic weekend in Glastonbury, and she dropped me at Heathrow on the Monday, and I went off to Vancouver. And then I called her, and she was feeling a bit poorly, and I called the next day, and she was a bit poorly. And then on the Thursday, I got a call saying, is there any chance you can get an early flight, because she's not very well, I had to go into hospital. So I jumped on a plane, but by the time I got home on Friday, she died.
Oh, Gary, that must have been awful.
It was so surreal.
Did you know while you were in the air, or did you find out when you landed?
I didn't find out until I landed. I had no idea. It turned out when I did the maths, it turned out she actually died while I was waiting to get on the plane. So when I was actually sat at the airport waiting to come home is when she died. But yes, no, I hadn't got a clue. I mean, she was always super fit and everything like that, and it just was very, very fast. They didn't know what happened at the time. They all the hospital were in shock when she died and freaked out by it. I heard a lot of reports afterwards. It turned out in the end that it was sepsis.
So she had flu-like symptoms, or
she had flu-like symptoms, and obviously she'd had a little other infection just beforehand. So the double whammy of these infections, with sepsis, is basically your body aggressively defending itself.
Yes, yeah.
And it fought back in it, and it killed her, which was just ridiculous. And I'd never really heard of it. And so, since then, obviously I've been doing a lot of stuff with the Sepsis Trust to try and heighten awareness about that sort of thing, because it's so easy to treat if you catch it early enough.
But
Simple
do people
antibiotic.
know what they're looking for? Because I mean,
Well-
we've probably, most people have seen it in their doctor's surgery. But would we take the notice if we saw those symptoms?
Well, one wonders, doesn't one? I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it? Because they just seem so sort of benign. It's nothing, a lot of the stuff that you see in it is just the sort of thing you go, I just feel a bit rough, I mean, and basically as an adult, okay, and it's great because they use sepsis as an acronym for it. So it's slurred speech or confusion, extreme shivering or muscle pain, passing no urine for 24 hours, severe breathlessness, it feels like you're going to die, and skin mottled or discoloured. If you've got any of those things, you need to sort of just call and say, I've got this. Could it be sepsis? Please check. Because if you catch it early enough, it's just antibiotics.
Yeah, and the other thing that's occurred to me when I was having a look at this morning was those symptoms are also symptoms they give out for the coronavirus.
Yes, and in fact, quite a few people that I understand from some of the reading I've been doing that the two things work together, and in fact, when you got the corona, it can weaken everything else, and it's sepsis that actually gets you.
Oh right, okay.
Some of the symptoms up front are a bit coronary, but once your defences are down a bit, there are some people where it is sort of sepsis is a sneaky bastard, and it dives in there and looks for its ways in, and that's
sure. So if you're in doubt at all, contact your doctor.
Doubt. I mean, that's what doctors are there for. They'd rather you go in and be told no, you're fine, than not say anything and they lose you.
Yeah,
it's yeah. So it was an incredible shock. And so unexpected. I mean, she was only 41. It's ridiculous, And
of course, you've got two young children, absolutely glorious children. But of course, you now are a single dad raising two children.
I am. Well, they were 7 and 10 when she died. Yeah, so it's crazy young. But yes, I'm doing the single dad thing, which was very unexpected.
Yes,
but it's all right. It's fun.
I imagine. I suspect they keep you on your toes. They're a unique, creative couple of kids, aren't they?
They are, yeah. I mean, they're both fairly artistic, and they both love acting and performing. And Ben, my son, the younger one, he's sort of one of nature's comedians, and Lily's incredibly sporty and very diligent. And they're just great kids. I mean, they can be a right pain in the arse. Don't get me wrong; they're not perfect.
They're kids, though.
I want to strangle them half the time, but actually, I'm very lucky. They're incredible children. So yeah, and they've been brilliant through the whole thing as well.
How was that adjustment period for them and you? Because obviously your doodle a day has the doodle a day has been quite a thing. You started that when Joy was alive, didn't you?
Yes, about a year and a half before she died. I just did it because I love drawing, and because I didn't do enough actual drawing. It's all sort of working in digitally and stuff like that. I wanted to draw, so I thought the easiest way to do it is to keep a diary, because then you have to do something every day. So I just used to do a diary of things that had happened that day. So that was the point of it. And then when she died, it became my sort of self-counselling technique. I would unload onto the page the feelings I'd had that day or whatever, or things I'd observed about the process, anything. And it meant that I could sit down, think about the day, examine what had happened, get that bit of drawing down, and then it got that out of my head, so I could clear my head for the next day. And that was the process I used to sort of see myself through. And and the kids like looking at them as well, and they used to enjoy looking back through and reading them. But also just by talking, that was the main thing with the children. We were just very open. I was right from the beginning. I was very open with them to talk about everything, and I was encouraged other people, if they came round, to talk, not to sort of be shush, not in front of the children, but actually just no. You can say it. It's happened to them. I'm not going to hide anything. Let's just talk, and they got used to it that way. And I think. From what I understand from talking to sort of professionals who work in the field since, that was the right choice to sort of be open and healthy about it.
I mean, we're not a brilliant country for dealing with death, are we? We don't really talk about it. And you can go to someone's house and somebody will have died and nobody actually mentions it for all the time you're there.
And I get this the whole time from people who I meet whose parents died when they were younger or something, and they went through the same that my children are going through. And they're saying, and it was just brushed under the carpet. We never spoke about it. We never did. And that's so painful. It's much less painful to be open and acknowledge it and start a dialogue and talk through it. and come to terms with it that way than have it brushed under the carpet and be this thing that's bubbling away, eating away at you inside.
Yeah.
You look back in the past. I mean, you better than anybody know this kind of thing. Look at the way our ancestors treated death.
Mm-hmm.
It was a public thing. Everybody, it was almost a celebration as far as we can tell. You would celebrate the life of the person. It would be a community thing. And it wasn't brushed away. And until very recently, in the great scheme of things, it wasn't something that was shushed. It was something that was part of life because it's the only inevitable.
I mean, I think the Celtic countries and a lot of the romantic countries are still do that. It's a death is a community thing. They grieve together.
Yes.
They talk about the deceased. They're part of the life. They're almost, it's a weird thing to say, but they're still part of the life.
Totally. I don't find that weird at all. I find that absolutely ties in exactly with the way we look at it. And a lot of what I do with regards to Joy is although yes, I was mourning because I'd lost her and there was grief, but everything I've tried to do was celebrate who she was. Absolutely. And what we had, and celebrating the life of the person that you've lost is so much more healthy than just bemoaning the fact they've gone.
And she is very present in your life. You can see that if you look back over the work that you've done and the wonderful video. I was watching the wonderful video you put together for the One show yesterday. Yeah. And I remember seeing it the first time and crying my eyes out the first time. And last night there I was booing again watching it. And one thing that comes across in all the things that I've seen you in is she's very present. She's very present for you and the children.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. I mean, you met her, she was not larger in life in a kind of noisy way. She was just very present. She was a person who, her spirit, her warmth would fill a room. She had a smile that was infectious, a laugh that everybody, and she lived life and she loved life. And she was one of those people who was very there.
Yes.
So just because she's gone doesn't mean she's still not very there. She impacted on us so much.
She was very much a shining star.
Yeah, oh, bless you. Thank you. I thought so, yeah.
And I do think she was very warm. And as you say, that for the first time meeting her, I realised she affected everybody around her.
And the irony of that is she had no idea. She had no idea that she had that effect. She was very humble, very self-effacing, didn't really think people liked her that much. She just thought she was so unaware of what an effect she had on other people, which is sad and also rather beautiful, actually, because I think if she'd known, she wouldn't have been that person, I guess. And it was natural to her to be like that.
And Lily is beginning to look more and more like her, isn't she, as she gets older?
Yeah, she's very much like her. It's funny, actually. She is very like her. She's tall and slim, and she's got this way about her. What's interesting is actually what I've come to realize quite recently is her look facially isn't as much like as everybody thinks. She's actually incredibly like my mum was when my mum was younger. Facially, her features are just like mum. I found some old photos of my mum in her 20s recently, and I posted them, and everyone went, "Oh my God, that's Lily!" And I looked at them and went, "Oh, you're right." So, funny enough, although she has elements of Joy about her, it's more her manner,
her mannerisms. Yes, I was going to say,
and her physicality.
It's the way she holds herself. I thought actually looking at Lily the other day,
the way she moves. That is it's I'm seeing Joy all the time in that. And of course, she's just in 2 weeks' time she's going to be a teenager, and she's literally about an inch shorter than me now as well. She's going to be like her mum, who was just a whisker under 6 foot, so she was taller than me, and Lee is going to be the same. So yeah, it is like seeing Joy every day, and in fact sometimes so much so it takes my breath away occasionally.
Yes, yeah.
The weird thing that started happening when I'm talking to friends sometimes about something that Lily's done, I occasionally had that slip of the tongue and say Lily. It's weird because I never had that thing early on after she died of that. I had that thing of wondering if she was going to come in the room, but I never got that muddle going on. Yeah. But as Lily's maturing like this, just occasionally, by mistake, I'm talking about her and I say Joy instead of Lily, which is bizarre, possibly slightly Freudian. I don't know, but it's I think it's just a tribute to just, how much
absolutely.
of her mum.
And I do notice that her grace is very much Joy's.
Oh, yeah.
Lily has a grace about her that Joy had. And you can see even in sort of the lockdown videos, which I absolutely loved, by the way. They were awesome. And they're still available on YouTube.
On YouTube, the Gary Scribbler is my YouTube channel, all one word with a capital G and S, Gary Scribbler. And yeah, they're on there forever. The lockdown trilogy.
We'll put links to everything we're talking about in the show notes anyway.
Thank you.
But yes, great. She very much reminds me of Joy, the way she moves and that gracefulness that Joy had. Just wonderful. So
she's also clumsy, which is brilliant. She's very clumsy, and Joy could do gawky and awkward very well when she wanted to switch it on. You know,
right?
Physical comedy that she could do, and she was genius at doing that kind of awkward physical comedy. And Lily kind of managed to do that naturally.
Oh, bless her! But that's being 13. You kind of go through that, don't you?
As someone who's growing about a foot a week and not knowing where their legs end, but
bless her heart. Now you are ambassador for the Winston's Wish, yeah, which is a charity that supports children and young people after they've lost a parent or a sibling, I believe.
That's right. Yeah, it's there's 3 charities that I'm an ambassador for, and that's one of them. And they approached me and asked me. They saw my profile and they saw my stuff and asked if I would like to be involved. And I'm delighted to be. They're an incredible charity. I mean, we never used them personally because we kind of we did it ourselves. You know, yes, we saw ourselves through that. But I know many people for whom they have been an incredible lifeline, and I think they're extraordinary and that they're lovely people. So yeah, it's a nice one to be involved with, definitely.
Sure. And what do they do? Provide counselling or?
Yeah, there's counselling. It's help when people go through it. They literally can guide your hand from day one. You know, if a child loses a parent, they can. Counselling is one of the big things they do, and also they do like retreats and stuff for kids where they can put children in touch with each other who've gone through similar things. They've got a load of resources that you can use and tap into if you need sort of practical help as well. I mean, they're just a wonderful helping hand through that awful process, because none of us really know quite how to sort of navigate it. We all muddle through, and some people need more help than others or whatever. I'm very lucky. I have this medium of drawing that for me was a filter through which everything happened.
Sure.
And also, I'm also incredibly lucky. I had a very good friends circle of people who, like myself, are in the arts, so we're used to emotion.
Yes.
And could cope with tears and with putting a comforting arm around or whatever. Some people's friend circle is either smaller or more emotionally closed off and wouldn't have that kind of support.
Sure.
So for people in that situation, someone like Winston's Wish is absolutely invaluable. And
of course, your circle, as you say, would be perfect for the children and for you. I mean, I think probably our circles are as well. You know, the whole pagan thing, we're very touchy-feely. We're all desperately suffering at the moment because we can't hug.
Pagan hug fests are, you know, whenever we all get together, it's kind of, it's all very bear huggy. And I should think Damh the Bard must be really suffering without cuddles at the moment.
I know. I think everybody is. Although he has got his live concert, so he does get a bit of love, really.
He gets a bit of digital loving, doesn't he?
Does.
Yeah, it is difficult. I mean, I am a very tactile person, and the circles I move in, you say the pagan circle, the sort of theatrical, the media, we are very physical people.
Yeah.
And I think that's also been really useful for the children as well. I mean, you know, the love and affection they were surrounded by in the early days when Joy died was extraordinary, you know, and they knew they could turn to any of our friends and they would be there for them. And they had so many stand-in mums, as it were, with all my friends at the theatre.
Which is wonderful.
Yeah, it's fabulous. So, I mean, so Winston's Wish can provide that for people who don't have those kind of outlets. You know?
Sure. And am I right in saying that you're pagan? I think you are, aren't you, Gary?
Yes, I think
I've never sort of classified it with you, but
I describe myself as a secular pagan.
A secular pagan, okay.
So what I mean by that is I love the whole pagan ethos, the whole pagan lifestyle, the whole pagan belief set.
Mm-hmm.
I don't personally get involved much in ritual.
Sure.
I've never been big on ritual of any kind ever since I was younger anyway. I think despite my sort of theatrical sort of side, I get faintly embarrassed in those sort of group activities and I feel a bit sort of self-conscious.
Sure.
So I do my own little mini rituals for myself with candles and just sort of quiet moments on the points of the wheel and stuff like that. And when it comes to things like the gods, again, there are some people who believe in them as actual physical entities or whatever. For myself, I like to think of them as personifications of the forces of nature.
Yes.
I'm the kind of paganism for me where nature is what I worship. Nature is what I sort of believe in, and I like to acknowledge the turning of the wheel of the year and the points of the wheel and all that kind of thing. And I see the gods as anthropomorphisms of forces of nature,
Absolutely,
as opposed to actual physical beings.
Sure.
But that's the same with, Christians have varying levels of belief in the gods that they deal with, and vice versa. So I see myself, that's why I sort of jokingly call myself a secular pagan. But yeah, I'm pagan light, I suppose. But I certainly identify with paganism as my spirituality, perhaps other than a religion. I think if you want to think of it in those terms.
How did you find that belief? And I think how you see the gods is quite common within paganism.
Right.
And not everybody jumps into a ritual every 5 minutes. There are people who are built for ritual and people who aren't. In my experience, that's the way it goes.
My own ritual, I think, comes from theatre. I have, that fulfills that part of it for me. Whereas I think, sort of the group side of it in the other sort of ritual, I find it slightly difficult to cope with.
Did you find that those beliefs helped you with the grief?
Absolutely, 100%. And in fact, going through this reinforced exactly where I stood. I think because leading up to it, we both embraced the whole lifestyle and of it, and paid lip service to it, and enjoyed the company of other people who have the beliefs to greater or lesser degrees, and that was fantastic. And I certainly identified with that whole branch. And then when Joy died, it just brought home to me just how much it did mean to me, and how much the spirituality of it worked for me. For instance, so when she died, one of the things I said to the children would say to me, so what happens when you die? And I'd say, well, nobody knows, and they hear of things like heaven or whatever, and the summer lands and all that sort of thing. And I say, well, nobody knows if it's a real place or not. It's what people want to believe. But it's symbolic of moving on. I said, what I believe is we come from stardust, we go back to stardust. Energy has to go somewhere. It's physics, but also it's stardust. So also it's like, she's died, she's gone, but she's everywhere.
Yes.
She is literally everywhere because the energy has gone.
Yeah.
So if you need her, she's that butterfly, she's that bird, she's that leaf, she's that breeze, she's that sunbeam. She is everything and everywhere. And they liked that and took comfort from that. And that's kind of how I felt. And then when she was cremated, I had a cremation. I didn't go because I'm not into the whole funeral idea. I didn't think so. She was actually cremated away, sort of thing, in a cardboard coffin, all very green and recycly. But I knew it was happening, so I lit the candle and I said goodbye to the physical entity that had been her. I said goodbye to her the moment she died. For me, the physical entity was just a receptacle. Yes. But I said goodbye to that when she was cremated, and I did a doodle on the day that said that it's the four elements. You've the fire is the medium. You've been sent back to air and the smoke. Your ashes, the earth, and the water is my tears. And it was the four elements, and it really struck me on that day that the four elements were part of that whole process. And then what we did do, we had her passing ceremony in the woods. Yes, yeah, which was an incredibly beautiful day. And there was about 200 of us, I think, out in the woods in this massive circle. And Dave took the officiated, and we had the four elements sort of there, and people said things, and we had this cauldron that people put offerings into. They were basically anything organic, leaves, feathers, stuff that was biodegradable. And as they put it in, and a friend of mine was singing a beautiful song, and they put them in with a thought and a wish and a prayer or whatever they wanted to do. And then later, when we had her ashes and planted a tree for her honor in one of the parks nearby, all those bits that were in that went into the root hole along with her ashes to feed the tree. Sure. So all their thoughts and dreams, so those kind of aspects. It was a very pagan way of dealing with that for me. It was I remember a lot of my friends who came to the ceremony, the sort of the non-pagan friends, all came up to me after and went, "Oh my goodness, that was the most beautiful, most moving thing. I'd never realised you could do that sort of thing. That's what we want to do now, and it was quite an incredible thing to see people open to it, because it's just so. It is so spiritual and so natural and so personal. It's you're not sitting in some sometimes beautiful but often drafty building listening to some person who never knew the person go, oh, so did this, and then a box goes behind a curtain and everybody's going, and the music's going, and you just think, gee,
it's incredibly these passing rituals that we do are incredibly personal.
Yeah.
And I feel really do feel that we're missing that. And
I mean, had when we got married, we had a hand fasting.
Yes.
In the circle, and when the children were born, they had naming ceremonies in our garden. And when we had our hand fasting under the trees, and we did all the jumping the broomstick, and did all the thing. When the kids were born, I say we had the naming ceremonies. We planted a tree for them both when they were born. It just seemed to make perfect sense that she died. And we just did another circle, planted another tree, not the same day, but it was the same process. It's repeating that process, but with a different outlook on that day, but with that same positivity and thanks and acknowledging that you're part of the cycle of nature as well. That was the other thing that was important to me and there was this incredible moment when, as we said goodbye, all the trees moved in this breeze and a beam of light came down and hit the cauldron. The moment we said goodbye, there was this, and I remember an audible gasp in the circle of people. And so many people came out to me afterwards and went, I don't believe that happened. That was extraordinary. And I was going, yep. And she liked to go out in style. She liked to make an exit.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Got a spotlight.
Bless her. So you and Joy met over your passion for Shakespeare.
We did. Well, technically, I suppose it was certainly our passion for theatre. We met through theatre at a little local theatre in which I live, near where I live, and I saw her do something when she was young. Because she was 15 years younger than me. So when I first saw her, she was a teenager. She did this performance, and I thought, oh, she's a clever girl. And then you didn't think much else of it. And then she crewed for me in a couple of shows. And then she went off to university and all that. And I just thought, oh, that's that talented youngster, you know. And then she came back from doing her degree, and she was a grown up then. And that was round about the time that I was casting a production of Midsummer Night's Dream, and being 6 feet tall, she was a perfect Helena. So I cast her in that, and we just became like really, really good friends really quickly. We suddenly realized we just had so much in common and made each other laugh in a way that I'd never known before with anybody, and just how much we just clicked and loved each other's company. And we just spent a lot of time in each other's company throughout that show and just had a great time. When the show finished, we just kept doing it, nipping round to watch a film and have a chat or whatever. And I remember I used to sit there thinking, oh, it's so nice having a friend like this. She's so young and hot and gorgeous. It's just a shame I'm not any younger and a bit, you know, because what would she be interested in an old fart like me, you know? So I used to sit there thinking that, but I was just so grateful to have her as a friend. She was lovely. And then one day we were sitting watching a film on her sofa, and we turned to say something to each other, and both went quiet at the same moment, and then sort of went, did you just feel? And we had both felt this kind of weird literal falling sensation at the same moment. Wonderful. And we realized that we'd literally fallen in love at that moment at the same time, and just sort of went, oh right, I think that just happened then. And like literally at that moment we became a couple and realized we didn't want to ever be apart again. So it was an extraordinary, we called it our Stargate moment. It was literally that feeling when in Stargate, when they go through the worm. It literally felt like that. It was a physical sensation, I kid you not, and we happened at the same moment.
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
Incredible. It was incredible.
So on this subject, have you thought about love for the future? How that would play out for you? Because that's again another big taboo that surrounds death here. If you have a partner that's gone, when is it right? You know, and there's a lot of judgment in it. So
definitely, and I've known of people who've met the next person within weeks, and other people who've spent years not being able to put it behind them or whatever. So there's two parts to this question. The theoretical is that I always equated it, the idea of it. I've always been open to the concept of it, that it's like having kids. I remember when we had Lily, and the amount of love that you feel for that child, and you go, oh my, and then Joy got pregnant again, and it's like, so what happens now when that one's born, right? Have we got to go split this love and share it a bit with how does that work? And then of course they get born, you realize this whole other wellspring of love comes up for that one as well, and you don't love the first one less because the second one's come. And I think it could be the same with love for a person. Joy's dead, she's gone. I cannot have her back. But you cannot take away those memories.
No, absolutely.
I still love that memory. And I love her as much now as the moment I first met her and the moment she died. That feeling cannot and will not go away. But like with the second child, I see absolutely no reason why you cannot meet somebody else and feel those feelings again. Mm-hmm. I think that is completely natural and right. In terms of timescales, everybody's timescale for everything when it comes to grief and mourning is completely different. I talk about this a lot because I give quite a few talks and things about this sort of stuff now. And there is no right or wrong way to grieve. Everybody has their own path. I preach, openness about it and talking or whatever, and positive grieving, if you like, and laughter and all that kind of thing. But in terms of when you're at a certain point, that's very individual. For me, I'm now just coming up to 3 years. And I was talking to a friend of mine about this the other day, who's going through this in exactly the same point at me on the timeline. And I was talking to her, and we were saying it's like a book. Mm-hmm. You're reading a nice big fat book, like a big Philip Pullman or something like that, some nice big book. Mm-hmm. And you turn a page, you turn a page, you turn a page. You turn a chapter, you turn a chapter, you turn a chapter. And then at some point, about a third of the way through the book, maybe, you turn a page and it will say part 2, right? And it's almost like another book within the book.
Yep.
So part 1 is still in your left hand and you can still flick back and look through it. You haven't torn it off and thrown it away. It's still there, but you're now in part 2 of the book. And I kind of feel personally, that's where I am emotionally with the life. I've now gone into part 2, like part 1 is still there. I can look back through those pages. I can still enjoy those pages, but I feel personally like I'm in part 2. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Does that answer?
Yes, it does. It does. And I do know that, how being married to a gorgeous Gary, how you gentlemen tend to attract the ladies, you see. So it was one of those questions I just had to ask. And
I think I'm not exactly beating them away from the door with a stick, but I do have lots of lovely friends, and I am hopeful that day is,
That's good though. It's great, and it's good that you've spoken about it, because as I said, it's one of the taboos.
It's another one of the taboos, definitely. It is. There's many taboos around it. One of the taboos is using the word death and died, and some people use so many euphemisms for it. And for me, it's like, use the word. Use the word, because it takes the sting away. When I told the children, it's the first thing I said. When I said that she'd been in hospital, blah, 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 and the doctors couldn't do anything, and mummy died. And that's the word I used straight away, because I thought it was so important for them to hear that.
To understand, yeah.
She hasn't gone to sleep. She hasn't passed away or gone to heaven, all those things. She died. Yeah. Okay, and that's important for them to get. Because then you said the worst thing you can ever say to them.
Absolutely.
And from then on, it's all healing, So I do encourage people when they're talking to me to say, when Joy, I say, died, you can say it, because that's what she did. And as soon as you let people say that, they feel better about it as well, because they're not treading on eggshells anymore. They can...
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's our British thing about avoiding the subject, isn't it? It's
and quite frankly, if you don't want to talk about it, you'll say to people, I'd rather people say, do you mind if I go? And I go, yeah, that's fine. No, please do. Or I could say, let's not talk about that. Maybe I'm feeling a bit sensitive today. Can we not? Or whatever, but I won't, or very rarely. But I think it's always best to ask. So, and having had this happen now, when I meet other people in a similar situation, I'll just dive in.
Sure.
And be open. And 99 times out of 100, it's the right thing to do. Just very occasionally, someone might be having a problem coming to terms with it. And you go, okay, and you know where to backpedal.
Yes, yeah.
But just being open and using. So it is the taboos. Is the taboo of the word, the taboo of the next partner, all these just talking about it in front of the children. There's so many things that people are awkward about, and it's like, God, they're only awkward because people don't do it.
Absolutely And people like you are helping to change that, and I think it's really important. Having lost my parents in the last 5 years, I've lost both my parents, and it really hit me, because one was in the States and one was here.
Yeah.
And the States are actually quite different, and depending on where you are, on how they deal with death. And here, we're very tight-lipped about it. It's actually, the contrast is quite big. And I just suddenly thought, I actually just want to talk about this. And it's actually really, really difficult at times. People don't want to talk about it. They want... And I think we've just got a big problem.
Did you find sometimes, I thought, I don't want to be a death bore, though. I don't want to be the person who, let's not go see Gag, because that's what he's going to talk about is dead stuff. It's like, no, that's not what it is. You know, I think what I try to do is, if you get me started on it, you know, good luck to you, because I can talk about it forever. But I'm not going to make that my choice of topic of conversation. You know, I'm not going to go, hello, let's talk about dead things. That's not. But if you say to me, so what do you think about that? You'll find out.
Absolutely. And I think we need to be like that. I think there needs to be more people like that, to be honest.
Well, I say to people that I am a widower. That is who I am. That is what's happened. I can't take that away. But I don't want that to define who I am. No,
of course.
But it does inform everything about who I am now. Because if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be who I am, where I am now. So it informs everything about my life, but it doesn't define it.
Absolutely.
That's the way I feel. I lost both my parents years ago as well. So I've been through that before. Interest, just as a sidetrack from what you were saying. I mean, I was 28 when my dad died and 31 when my mum died. So, and that's like, you know, half my lifetime ago sort of thing. So I've been through exactly that same thing before of, you know, feeling all those feelings. So when Joy died, actually, I was partly prepared for certain aspects of it.
Sure.
The practical, certain emotions that you'd feel. I was kind of prepared by having been through that.
Sure.
Although it's very different losing a partner to losing a parent. You know?
Yes, of course. And just backtracking a little now, you said you were an ambassador for 3 charities?
Yeah, so there's Winston's Wish, as I said. There's also Marie Curie.
Oh, I didn't know about Marie Curie.
They deal with a lot of sort of, you know, palliative care and all that kind of thing. So I've sat on a couple of panels and things for them, and I do bits and pieces for them as well. And they're lovely too. How did that come about then, Marie Curie? Again, they approached me. They approached me. All the charities, they saw my stuff and said, look, we love what you do. Would you consider being they mostly call me a digital ambassador, which means, you know, I draw stuff for them occasionally and help and get messages out there. And, you know, I can use my platform, if you like, when they've got a special event, I will help them publicize it or whatever and do special drawings for them linked to that event and things like that. And then sometimes if they have an event, I'll get invited to be on a panel or a talk or something. So that's how it works. And the third one I'm involved with, which is the one probably closest to my heart in a way, is called The Big Draw.
Okay, tell us a little about that.
Well, The Big Draw, they are a charity that are all about well-being through creativity, using creativity as a way to as sort of to support, you know, your mental well-being, and so it's not just a pure grief charity, it's just about general positivity and just well-being really, but using creativity as the medium for that. And then each year they have a separate theme, and there's a very green theme to it this year as well, sort of climate of change it's called. So I created a sort of green man kind of mascot for them, if you like, that we use occasionally to sort of heighten awareness of the thing. And they're lovely. And I've been to a couple of events with them where we just encourage the public to come in and draw, and we create huge artworks, and there's events happen all over the world, in fact, with these people under their banner. And it's about bringing community together to sort of be artistic and creative, and just people who might otherwise feel alone to be part of something bigger. It's a lovely charity. It's a hard one to say what they're about because they're kind of quite broad based.
Yeah.
But being through creativity probably is the easiest way to describe them. Sounds
wonderful, and you're perfect for that. Obviously, you seem to have so many talents. Just jumping back, because you're an animator. Am I right to say you describe yourself as?
That's probably the best description. Yeah, illustrator, animator, cartoonist, but animation is the main thing, I guess.
So I'm aware that you have quite a fan base who follow you, how did you get into this? Because I'm also aware that there'll be kids and all sorts of people listening to this who might go, oh, I'd like to do that.
Okay. Well, it's quite, and of course, don't forget that when I got into it, it was sort of the dark ages. So things have changed a bit since then. But my route was, I've always drawn. I've always drawn stuff. I love drawing. I've drawn since I was a baby. And I'm never happier than when I've got a pen in my hand. So I was doing illustration and stuff at art college and everything like that. I also love making films. And I used to make films in my spare time at art college, making Super 8 movies with my mates and stuff like that. And I couldn't make live action films at college because I was on an illustration degree, so I wasn't really allowed officially. So I used to make them at the weekends for fun, but as part of my course, I couldn't do it. However, they had an animation rostrum, and one of the tutors knew how to load it. Didn't know how to teach it, but they knew how to load it. So I just made a couple of films because it was like, okay, well, I'm making films and drawing at the same time. Yay, double whammy. So I made a couple of films. Then when I left college, I sort of went around the various animation.
That was kind of throwaway. You made a couple of films. How do you just make?
I was doing. I knew how they were made because I'd read some books and knew how animated films are made. So I just made a couple, just followed the principles. Well, one drawing comes after another. Each one's a little bit different, and that'll move. You know, and they were okay. They were okay. They weren't brilliant, but they were fine. And I sort of, when I left college, I went around the various studios thinking, well, they'll get me some design work or something like that, maybe. And one of the places I went into said, do you want to come in for 3 weeks while someone's away? In hospital, we've got an empty chair for 3 weeks if you want to come in. I was like, oh, lovely. And I went in to sit in this chair for 3 weeks, and I stayed there 3.5 years. I fell in, and I fell into it. And when the 3 weeks came out, they went, do you want to stay? I was like, oh, yes, please. And I learned on the job. And what it turned out was I had a sort of natural aptitude for animation that I didn't realize I had. So I didn't grow up as an animation fan in my teens and stuff. I liked it, but I preferred filmmaking and drawing. I never really thought about putting the two together, you know, because such a genius that I am, I hadn't really put that one together. But I suddenly found I had an aptitude for it. So it appealed to everything I like, which is drawing, filmmaking, and performing. And you're doing all three at once as an animator,
which is wonderful.
You're acting very slowly with a pencil. You know, it's kind of what it is. So that's what I did. I sort of fell into it and did that for years and years and years, and it just. I never had a plan, but slowly as the time goes on, you find yourself in different areas until I found myself as a director now. So I now direct stuff as an animator.
You did some work for Disney UK as well, didn't you? You've done some quite high profile stuff.
That was back in the late 80s. We had Disney movie tunes over here. It was quite fun. It was a film called DuckTales, the movie, Treasure of the Lost.
I know the film actually.
And I was on that, and then we did some stuff on some of the TV series and things. But I worked with them for about, I don't know, it must have been about 18 months, I suppose, before they shut the studio down. We were just bolshy Brits and didn't do what we were told, so they shut us.
Weren't you something to do with Fern Gully?
Yeah, I did a couple of scenes on that. I can't remember how many scenes now. I was working remotely, freelance, and I think I probably did about half a dozen scenes at most on that, but you know, just little bits. But so I did that. I worked on the lovely Beatrix Potter films from the beginning of the 90s when Nick Cusack was Beatrix Potter, the live action, and we had all those beautiful animated sequences that were done very much in her style. And I worked on about 3 of those, which were lovely. And yeah, I sort of tootled along through all that, and then found myself working more and more on TV series. And then when Lily was born, so just 13 years ago, roughly, round about now, I found myself working on Fireman Sam, and for a couple of years as animation director, and then as series director. I did that for a few years, for about 12 years.
I bet that was loads of fun.
That was just the most fun. The actors are all great. The stories were fun. It was a lovely show to work on. And then that finished, although it's now started again, but out of Canada now, they make it there. But I'm still involved as a voice director. And in fact, I'm a voice on it as well now. I'm one of the characters.
So who do you play? Who are you?
I play a character called Gareth, who is he's an old chap who runs the train up in the mountains, and he's the granddad to the twins. So I play Gareth. I'm up in the mountains going, come on, you two, all aboard the Pontypandy flyer.
Wonderful.
So that's me there, which is quite fun. And but these days I direct Horrid Henry now.
Do you? Oh.
Yeah. So we just finished working on a special for them, and we've got a couple more coming up, which I'm just about to start on. So that's a fun one too. Again, lovely people to work with, and interesting because after 12 years of working on a CG series, this has gone back to drawn animation.
Yes, yeah.
Where I started, so that's kind of nice to be working on something drawn again. Yeah, so I kind of fell into it really, and I mean these days it is a bit different. There are a lot more colleges teaching that kind of thing these days. And there's a lot of doors to bang on, and the work is very different to how it was when I fell into the business. Sure. But essentially, if you love it, go for it and knock on enough doors, albeit these days mostly digitally knocking on their doors, you know. Absolutely. But if you've got a talent for it, it will hopefully get spotted by somebody.
You work at home. Did you find it, obviously with the children at home, it makes sense for you to work at home. Did you, have you always worked at home, or did you have to kind of, with lockdown and everything, did you have to kind of transfer
I've always
yourself?
always had a studio at home. And over the years, I mean, I was looking at it the other day, I've been working now for 37 years since I graduated. Wow. I'm that old. And I've always had a studio at home. And I guess out of those 37 years, probably 8, maybe 9 of those years, I've worked in-house somewhere.
Okay.
Spread out over the time. The rest of it, I've worked from home and sent stuff in or taken stuff in to various studios. So I'm very much used to and think of myself as someone who works from home.
Sure.
I mean, I go up to town, once, every now and then to be involved in a voice recording or a meeting or whatever. But essentially, I have my office and that's where I work. So for lockdown for me, and these recent crazy times, there was no difference for me in terms of work. I've been just as busy because, again, the work I do hasn't really been affected by it because people still need that staff. And because we're all working in an isolated way, it hasn't affected us in that way because everybody involved with it is working in isolation in one way or another. The biggest difference for me, obviously, was having the children at home 24/7 and not being at school. Because when they go to school, I do the school run. I come home and I know I've got from 9 o'clock till 3 o'clock
to do.
solid.
Yeah.
And work solidly, and then I go and get them. And when they come home, I'm on a sort of half time where I'm there for them. I might need to nip out and do a few things, but basically I'm theirs. So I do solid work for that 9 till 3 every day.
Yeah.
And I'm theirs. And then when they go to bed, if I need to catch up, I'll come out here of an evening and just catch up. So that's what I was used to. Suddenly having them at home 24/7 with the whole homeschooling thing and all that, that was the biggest change. But I mean, I just had to face the fact I'm not a teacher.
Yes.
And there is only me.
Yeah.
And if I sit there all day being their teacher, we're not going to have any food. So I had to get on with my work. And I have my watch set to go beep once an hour to make me stand up and not just sort of totally atrophy or mold into my chair. So every once an hour I get up and have a little walk around and then sit down again. So what I did on that every hour, I'd pop in the house to see how they were doing.
Sure.
So I'd set them up in the morning, and I mean, Lily's at secondary anyway. She was year 7, so she had her stuff coming in on the computer anyway to do, and I would just make sure she was okay and up and running for that day. And did she have any questions? With Ben, I had to sort of prep him more, tell him what to do that day.
But he's that much younger, isn't he?
Yes, he's year 5 throughout lockdown. Yeah. So I didn't have the time to do all the work they were sending through from the school because there was just so much admin on that and so much having to look over him. But what I did was I bought a lot of the books they use for the question and answer things at the school, and I got him I'd say to him, right, in this next hour, you need to do these 2 pages.
Sure.
And then I'd come back and go, you done that one? Right, now get this book and do these pages.
You do have to break it up into small chunks for them. Yeah.
Yeah, especially him. As a 10-year-old boy, he had the attention span of a peanut. So it kind of... he's so easily distracted that I just had to do it in small chunks. And then I'd say, right, you've done all that writing for a couple of hours. Here, read this Asterix book next.
Sure.
And because reading's important. But you put a novel in front of their hands when you're not there with them, and sometimes they just distracted. Asterix is great.
That's wonderful.
The writing's great. The drawings are great. You're learning about, strangely enough, about history. My love of history and all things ancient stems from me reading Asterix when I was younger. Absolutely, 100%. I love all that. So I got him to read. I've got the whole set. So he was reading like one of those a day.
Wonderful.
So that sort of thing. So that's the way I sort of homeschooled and got through it, really. And then at weekends we'd make our films and we'd do painting sessions together and all that kind of thing.
They were wonderful. I loved watching. I loved seeing the pictures of you guys painting. And
we'd give ourselves a theme each week. We'd say, okay, this week let's choose this theme, and we'd do our paintings on that, and we'd do like portraits. And then Portrait Artist of the Year, the Sky program, started doing a weekly thing online. So I started doing that, and they joined in a bit. And and it became a sort of our weekend thing. That's what we do. We would do art at the weekends or make films. And it was, I was talking to a friend about this morning, and I feel we're coming out of it, aren't we? I mean, we're going back to school soon. I mean, it's not exactly, we're not through the woods yet, but it's certainly thinned out. And I think we're a tighter unit because of it.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. I mean, God, there's times we want to throttle each other, but we've done so much fun stuff together, and we have an understanding of how each other work, and they understand my needs a bit more as a person as well, and that I need my space because we couldn't get away from each other. You know, previously I'd be out doing theatre and they'd have a babysitter in or whatever, and I'd be doing all the things that I do that gave me my grown-up sanity.
Yes, absolutely.
And of course I couldn't do all that. I was there with them 24/7, couldn't go anywhere. So they became appreciative of the fact that, look, you guys, it's time for you to go to bed now. I need my evening now.
Grown-up time.
You don't have to go to sleep necessarily. Read your book, do whatever. Just if you need me, I'm there. But please, can you give me my evening? Can you give me my thing? Or I need to go and do this painting now. I need to do whatever. And they appreciate that I need that. And I think that's healthy as well. I really do think. I think in some ways it's been quite positive. We were locked down with our 13-year-old granddaughter. And I know. She's lovely. So yeah.
But she is 13. And
tell me about it. Yeah.
So there were moments.
lovely with reservations.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. But I do think it gave us a greater understanding of each other, maybe one that we wouldn't have had previously. Yeah. I think if we could all pull, there's been so much negativity. It's been a terrible thing for everyone to have to go through. I mean, this is, not just once in a lifetime, once in a several generations experience. This is history book stuff we've been going through. We're living through it. But if we can just pull a few positives from it, then that's brilliant. And I think we owe it to ourselves and to future generations to find the positives out of this. Definitely. Absolutely. And I do think there are positives. I think a lot of, as you say, a lot of people are beginning to, because we've all been enforced into to living together in intimate proximity for so long. I think we've learned a great deal about each other. I think it's improved relationships at times.
And the whole thing of family bubbles as well, where, in the early days when you would perhaps be forced to be in your bubble could only be your family.
Yes.
So suddenly you had these extended family groups, which is the absolute norm of the way humanity has lived for most of its existence until very recently.
Yeah.
And it's only recently we've isolated ourselves off into our separate little houses, and we don't live in big family units like we used to of three, 4 generations in one house, which is completely normal. And we don't. And so putting ourselves in these little family bubbles of extended generational units, I think that's been very interesting. And I think it's brought families together in a way that they wouldn't have done. Yes, there is a flip side that obviously the isolation with some people, we hear about the rise in sort of, domestic violence and stuff like that. Absolutely. In a lot of cases as well. But it's something that would be there anyway. I don't think it's forced it on anyone where it wouldn't have happened.
No.
It's just it happened sooner and that's a great sadness. But
I also think in those situations there's been more support.
Yes.
I think it's
that it's there.
Absolutely. Whereas before it might not have been noticed, but because we're all at home, because we're all listening, because we're watching out for our neighbours, I think there's probably more support and more help for those things during lockdown than there was at any other time.
Right. And so again, out of a negativity could come more positivity.
Absolutely.
Once again, we just have to teach ourselves as a society and as people to see that and to see positivity. Which again is going back to what I've been trying to do with the grieving, is finding those positives. And it's, I think, in all aspects of life, it's so important to look for those kind of things.
I think so. I'd like to jump back to Doodle a Day and your book. I'd like to jump back to your book, Finding Joy.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that and about the book and how that's all come about.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Well, so I've been doing these doodles every day, as we've talked about, and quite early on, people would say to me, "Oh, you should do a book of these. You should do a book of this. It would be lovely. We get a book." It just weeks, months into it, people. And I thought, that would be a good idea. And a couple of literary agents approached me early on and took me on, and we went to publishers with a package saying, "We got this idea for a book," and publishers would go, "Yeah, but we don't know what shelf to put it on. We love it, but we don't know how to sell it." And we go, okay then. And it all kind of died a death and went away. And I sort of said, thank you very much for everything, but I think I'm going to step away now to the agents and all that kind of thing. And I just left it alone, carried on doing the drawings. And I just got around to thinking, you know what, maybe I ought to think about self-publishing or something like that, because, you know, a lot of people are still asking me. And then out of the blue, I got approached by this publisher, John Murray Publishers, and they said, have you got a publisher? And I said no, and they said, we think it would be a brilliant book. We'd like to publish you.
Oh, wonderful!
And Abigail Scrooby, she was the editor on that. She's the one who'd been following me, and she'd seen this potential, and she said that. And I said, oh, lovely, let's talk. And I went in and talked, and I liked what I heard, and I liked them, and so we started working on it probably around about New Year, I suppose. Choosing what format it would be, how many pictures there would be in it. We went backwards and forwards on page count and all this kind of thing. And slowly, I mean, working with a good editor is brilliant. We've honed it down to this book. It's a couple of 100 pages, and it tells the story of the first 2.5 years, if you like, of the process, through a selection and a couple of hundred of the doodles. I mean, there's over 700, 800 of the doodles.
Sure.
Now. We're now coming up for 1,000 doodles, I suppose. Now it's nearly 3 years. But with a couple of hundred of the ones that really tell the story, they are in the book, and it flows that through. And there's an accompanying text, sort of almost subtitling text in it. It's not a full, like a novel, but there's a text that just guides you through the journey that I've been on. And there's a bit in the front, which is the backstory and all that kind of thing. It's about the size of the actual sketchbook I draw in as well. Okay. So the size of the drawings is exactly how they're drawn, and it's all printed on the brown paper, which is what I draw in as well. So that when you're holding the book in your hand, it's almost like holding one of the sketchbooks. Wonderful. They've done an amazing job. I'm so happy with it, and I can't wait. I mean, I'm anticipating by the time this goes out, it's probably out, but 3rd of September. No, it'll be.
The podcast will be out before it's released.
Oh, right. Excellent. Okay, so the book is due out on the 3rd of September from all booksellers. Yeah.
Where do we find it? Can we go anywhere? Amazon,
Waterstone, Amazon, Book Depository, local independents. Pretty much anybody should be able to get hold of it. It's a proper big release.
Super duper. That's great. And if anybody wants a signed copy, what do we do for that?
We're working on that.
Okay.
I have to say, we are working on that, because that's one of the big things, obviously, that before all this happened, we were planning book tours, we were planning signings, we were planning festivals. There was all this huge plan of what I would do. Obviously, things have changed. So the marketing and sales team at the publishers, we're coming up with a plan at the moment. So I guess it's watch this space on that one. Okay. We are going to work out a way if people are local enough to me, we'll work something out. Okay. If people know me, we can sort something out. But we are looking at ways that we can actually achieve this, because so many people have asked, which again is absolutely lovely and slightly mind-blowing, but it's glorious. So there will be a way somehow, but not as easy as it would have been.
Is there any chance Curious Creatures you've come up with now? How did Curious Creatures come about? What happened there?
Well, that's come off the back of, gosh, I always do my doodle a day. That's a very personal thing, but I just love drawing and I love entertaining people with pictures. So a couple of years back, I did Hot Santa, which went down very well. And I did a little book of him, a little self-published book, which people thought was very funny. And most years I do Inktober in October, where you do a drawing a day on theme. And I chose various themes. I think I chose bearded people or mysterious creatures or whatever. I did these sort of things. And then I enjoyed those drawings. So I started doing, I'm going to for a month, I'm going to give myself a theme. So I did things that spark joy and simple pleasures, which were just doodles about things that made me happy. And I would put them online and people go, oh, I love that. I love it. I like that sort of thing. Or what about this? And I'd get a feedback, get an interaction with the people that follow. And I just started really enjoying them. So then I started doing trees. I did a series of trees and then a series of flowers. And I would do these first thing in the morning. It became part of my way, like my doodler day is the last thing I do at night.
Sure.
So what I would do for these things, these series, was I'd get up in the morning, come downstairs, make myself a pint of warm lemon water, because I don't eat breakfast. So I have this pint of water. I'd sit at my table. I'd go, right, what's today's tree? It's this. And I'd do a drawing. No pre-planning, just do the drawing. And it would warm up my hand, warm up my brain, get my day going. And then I'd post it, and then I'd start my day. And they got this lovely feedback. So I was doing the trees and the plants, as I say, and I was coming towards the end of the flowers and thinking, I need something else. And I did some Curious Creature type things a while back where I did a similar thing, but it was it was only like a month long. So I had this beautiful leather bound journal. I said, right, I'm going to use this book. And I said to the people who follow, right, I'm going to do this thing of Curious Creatures. And what I want from you is a word that you use in your family, or it's a family word or a silly word that you've always used that's particular to you. I want to know what it means. Don't give me a definition. Just give me the word. Flufflebluff, you know what I mean? Murgleflag, whatever. These strange words, hippity-poppities, all these things that people have. And they loads of people gave me these words. Lots of people gave me the words with definitions. So obviously I just had to, I couldn't use those words. It's like, that's exactly the opposite of what I asked for. But people gave me these words and I wrote them in the book. And once I think it was about 100 pages in the book. So I think, right, I've got 100 of these words now. And so every morning I would come down, open the book, see the word and go, so what would that be? And on the spot, I would think of the animal, draw it, write a little thing about it, photograph it, put it up. So that was how Curious Creatures came about, really. It's a warm-up exercise and a bit of fun and a bit of entertainment. And they finished 2-3 weeks ago.
They're very fairy creatures. They're very, very similar to that sort of thing.
Who I am and what I'm into, I think it kind of was a bit of a foregone conclusion. They're all going to be a bit fantastical and a bit... folklorish.
Any chance of a future book for Curious Creatures?
Well, I am definitely going to self-publish, if nothing else.
Wonderful.
I'm definitely going to do a self-publish one of those, maybe even in time for Christmas.
That would be wonderful.
It'll be a simple one. It will be a nice, simple book, but it will be the collection put together in one place and printed so people can buy. Who knows? I don't know. I mean, my contract with the publishers has a clause in it that says, we have first option on your next project, sort of thing, which they put standard in every author's thing. And it's like, well, I don't really have a next project, but, could it be that? And if they're not interested, then I'll self-publish. Although, funny enough, again, a conversation I was having the other day about projects. And somebody said off the back of Finding Joy, have you thought about doing a book for children about the grief? And by that, I don't mean there's a lot of them out there that, where you've got a children's book of grief and you fill in this page with your feelings of so-and-so, which is all very well and good and works for some people, but not for me. But maybe a version of this where I talk to my children and work with them and come up with a storyline and a concept and how they've navigated it. And so a slightly simpler text, but from a child's perspective of what the process of grief feels, with drawings that are maybe not the Doodle a Day style, but adjust slightly to a more illustrative style. And working with the children. So that might be my next sort of official project if the publishers are interested. I think
it sounds amazing, and there's definitely space for it.
I mean, I'd like to think, it would be an interesting conversation to have with them and with my kids, because my kids have lived this and we've talked a lot, and I think I've got a lot to learn from them. We learn from each other. And they've taught me elements of how to grieve by watching the way they've done it. And because children respond in such a sort of primal way to grief.
Yes, yeah.
And seeing them and realizing how they don't bottle certain things up, but they do bottle some things, but then they don't, or whatever. It's taught me. So I think there probably is something to learn by talking directly to them and not being, I'm the grown-up, I'm going to tell children how to grieve.
Yeah.
Where's Daddy gone? Those sort of books. They have a place, but not for me. And I want to talk to them and say, right, if you were in that situation today, what would you have wanted? And being in this situation, what would you want to say to other children? And record them and write it down and then create a book around that. That might be something to do next.
Again, spreading your openness and wonderful, spreading that message about let's talk. Brilliant.
As far as I'm concerned, it stems back a little bit to something Lily said to me after Joy died. She said to me one night, she's a very thinky child. I suppose she must have been about 11 at the time when she said to me, she was crying and she said, Daddy, I was just thinking, what's the point of living if you're going to die anyway? And I thought, bloody hell, that's a good question for 11 o'clock at night, And I said, well, look at the way everybody talks about Mummy, about how much they loved her and about what a difference she made to their life and how much better their life was for having her in it and blah, 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 blah. That's the point. Yeah. Be that person. And that's the point of living. Be the person that makes other people's lives enriched by you having existed. And, I have this ability to draw, to make people smile by marks I can make on a piece of paper. So if I can, through kind of openness about stuff, help people, make people smile, make people think, I want to do that. I want my life to be positive in some way.
Absolutely.
And that's my way of doing it. So yeah, being open, spreading that is kind of the point of being here, really, as far as I'm concerned.
And it's wonderful, and I'm really looking forward to looking and seeing what your future projects will be. So I interviewed Adam Ranger in the last episode of In Bed with a Druid, and I asked him to set you a question for this interview. And his question was, if you could be a woman, alive, dead, real, fictional or famous, or even unknown,
wow,
who would it be and why?
Blimey. Crikey. If I could be a woman, alive, dead, fictional, famous, God, I wish I'd had free warning of this one.
It's
you
edited,
have to cut
you're
out
good.
my huge umming and erring and thinking on this one.
That's okay.
It's a very interesting question. And there's all sorts of answers one could give on that, because, you know, there's all the sort of obviouses, isn't there? The Elizabeth I, or the, you know, these sort of, you know, or you know, Galadriel or something like that. You know, all these sort of answers. I suppose, if I'm being perfectly honest and perhaps slightly schmaltzy and corny, my mum. So that's not weirdly Freudian, because I'd love to know what her life was like when she was younger and what made her the person she was, because she was so lovely and she went through a lot. She lived through the war, she did things, and it'd be interesting to have known just what made her tick. You know, we know our parents, but how do we really understand them, you know?
Yes.
And because I went to boarding school, I didn't have that total closeness that perhaps one would have these days with a parent, you know? Mm-hmm. So that would be fascinating to know what it was like to live through the war as a simple girl from a village in Essex who married someone on the bombers who got killed in the war and then met someone up, you know. So what must that have been like, having to bring up her whole brothers and sisters because she was the oldest girl and her dad didn't work. You see, you read about all this sort of thing, mm-hmm. and I knew her, but to know her better, maybe that would be the sort of person it would be interesting to be.
Interesting choice.
In a way, to think of big famous stuff like that, it's kind of they're either too obvious or too whatever. I just think I'd really like to know what made her tick, what made her the person she was.
Sure.
So probably that.
And often when we get to that stage in our life where we want to answer those questions, our parents aren't there anymore. So
they're not there. And there are so many. I know a certain amount of her past, and I've got all these wonderful photos, and I see these great photos of her, and I go, I wonder what was happening that day.
Mm-hmm.
Why is she laughing like that in that photo right now? And you can see photos of famous people doing that, and that's all well and good. I'd love to know what it was that made her who she was, because those genes are now part of me.
And part of your children, of course.
And part of my children. So I guess a deeper knowledge of where I come from, mm-hmm. by being her would be the one, I guess, if I'm brutally honest.
Wonderful. Great answer. Thank you. There you go, Adam. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, thanks for that, Adam. Oh, jeez, what an easy one.
We're running out of time, but would you like to tell people where they can find your work, your books, your videos?
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, the videos and stuff you'll find on YouTube under Gary Scribbler. That's capital G, capital S. I say follow the caps, don't leave any gaps. So Gary Scribbler. And to keep life easy, on Instagram or on Twitter, I am at Gary Scribbler. And on Facebook, it's Gary Andrews. And although my account is basically a friend's account, I do have a couple of public albums, one of which is the Doodle a Day and the Curious Creatures albums. So you can follow me.
And do you have a website?
I don't take friend applications, but I do take follows. To take a friend, I need to know you.
And do you have a website where we can get hold of the Santa book?
To get Oh God, what is my website? Gary Andrews.
I think it's garyscribbler.co.uk.
Yeah, I tried to keep it all quite simple. Yeah, garyscribbler.co.uk, garyscribbler.com, one of the two.
And can people order things there?
Yes, I've got a shop page on there. If you
Wonderful.
just look on the top, on the headline, there's a little shop, and then my little books and DVDs of the movies and stuff are all on there. If you want Finding Joy, you go to the sort of the your Watersons, your Amazons, your whatever, and that'll be everywhere.
Okay, that's
all
brilliant.
Over. Thank you.
And that's fine. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. And,
it's been an absolute delight as ever. And I can't wait until we can do this face-to-face and you get a big hug.
It would be wonderful. Hopefully I can interview again in the future when we don't have to be so socially distanced.
That would be lovely. I'm sure there's, you know me, once I get going, there's loads I can talk for England. So,
well, I'd like to know, I'm going to say, in a year's time, I'd like to know where your journey is, because it sounds like it's an interesting one.
It keeps moving. It's certainly ongoing. So, yeah, I mean, I'd love to come back. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Gary. Well, that's the end of our show today. If you enjoyed this interview, please do give us a review on iTunes and come and say hello on the Facebook page at facebook.com/inbedwithadruid, or on Twitter at inbedwithadruid, or on Instagram at inbedwithadruid. The links and mentions in today's show can be found in the show notes at inbedwithadruid.com. Thank you for listening, and come and cosy up on the next full moon for another different interview in Bed with a Druid. This podcast is a Celtic Myth Show production.